back, movie fans. I am back this episode. Michael Myers is back for a sequel. And guess what? We have a special guest. We have the Halloween super fan, Shaun, the man that if he had a hall pass, he would use it for Parker Posey. And
100%.
And
Good choice.
glad to have him on board. He's also part of Inside Baseball, our lost Screen 3 episode that we might see the light of day eventually, some bits and pieces. But how are you, Shaun?
It's weird because that was actually the best podcast anybody has ever recorded.
Yes.
I know.
And nobody will ever know anything about it.
I know, it was legendary.
Lost to the sands of time. It's a shame.
I was saying that, like, the next episode Cable and I recorded, that was weirdly the episode that made me feel like we had a real podcast, because every podcast that's legitimate has a lost episode that eventually, like, we recorded this thing and the audio didn't work, so we're sorry, we can't release that one. And that, like, anything, all the huge podcasts do that. And then when we had a lost episode, like, oh wow, we're just like the big boys. We're
in a serendipitous turn of events.
I got to be on it.
Yes, and that's where I was going to go with that. Michelle got her break. And hasn't looked back really.
No, whose podcast is it now?
It's your podcast.
Thank you. The Michelle and Angus show. You guys are.
You can't bring the group chat into the pod; it'll just explode. It doesn't work that way.
For anybody that is just listening to this, isn't actually watching it, then you should see the dominance. Michelle is in one quarter of the screen, and she is asserting her dominance on the two regular podcast hosts here. She has made them their bitch. It's amazing.
It wasn't hard either.
It's an unsettling dynamic that we settled into pretty quickly, frustratingly, but happily. We're all here to talk about the sequel to John Carpenter's Halloween, Rick Rosenthal's Halloween, which it doesn't sound right straight out of the gate. It was sort of the first of many things that changed, coming around to the second installment in the still ongoing Halloween franchise. In fact, I don't know if tonight was the official premiere, but I know it popped off in the group chat about the same time I saw it. Tonight was the first time I saw the official trailers for Halloween go up for Australia. I've seen like the Halloween Ends ones go up, but this is the one where Jamie Lee Curtis is now officially addressing Melbourne and asking them to go and see the final girl for the final time. They're really leaning into the fact that she's going to die in this one. That's kind of the promo. She keeps saying, "This is my final time as the final girl," and kind of winking. And I really hope they don't kill her.
Let's be honest. The only time that they're going to stop making them is when we stop watching them, and the only time Jamie Lee Curtis is going to stop being in them is when they stop paying her.
She's having a bit of a career resurgence at the moment. I don't think she'd close it all forever.
Yeah, no, she'd be absolutely out of her mind. Plenty of bank on these new Halloweens.
And I'm pretty sure, like, while she's intimating that this will be her last round, the producers have already said we like the Michael Myers thing. We're not adverse to continuing at some point down the line. I just think this part of the story arc will be closed off at this point, and then whether they continue with future episodes, prequels, who knows? I mean,
well, that's the good thing about rebooting a series for the third time, is that you can kill Laurie Strode for a third time, and the audience is like, "Nah, she'll be back. It's all right. We don't mind." Because if she does die in this trilogy, this will be the third time they've killed that character off, which is pretty impressive for one ongoing series that just keeps coming in and back and out of itself. When did we all see Halloween 2 for the first time? When was our introduction to the sequel to the masterpiece? When did you see it, Shaun?
I genuinely don't remember when. It was one of those ones. Scream, much like everybody else in here, was like the big one for me, opened up a lot of doors. And part of that was discovering Halloween, and Halloween 2 would have just been one of those weekly VHSs that I picked up at the video store when you got like 7 for 10 or something like that, and just slogged my way through them. So I really don't know. I genuinely couldn't tell you the first time I seen it. It was a while ago though. I mean, like, I'm 40 in a couple of months, and Scream came out when I was like 13. So I mean, that's how long ago we're talking, like 25 years ago.
Well, I feel like we had the same experience. I had the same thing. I watched Scream. I became obsessed with Scream, and then I watched the scene where Randy was watching a movie at the house party. I was like, "What is this movie?" And there was no internet, so I like watched it and was like, "Oh, that's Halloween." He talked about Halloween. That's Halloween. Then I went to the video store and I found it on VHS, and then next to it on the row of all the VHSs was 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then I was like, oh, this is going to be a good summer. And then I just grabbed armfuls of them, went home and watched them all. So I think VHS was definitely the big introduction for me.
I was going to say that one of the funny tidbits about Scream in regards to Halloween is that when Randy's talking about Halloween, some of the shots that they use on the TV is actually Halloween 2.
Is it?
You know that? Yes.
I didn't. I thought it was. I always thought the shots that I didn't immediately recognize were shots from the TV release of Halloween, because when afterwards they went and reshot some shit, and I think in the TV release version of the original Halloween, they shot stuff where they talk about Michael Myers is Laurie Strode's brother, and then edit it into the first one, so that it was like, it was always that way. We didn't just retcon it. But I didn't realize that was Halloween 2 in Scream. There you go. It was right in front of me the whole time. I had no idea. When did you watch it for the first time, Cable? How long has this been in your life?
Wow. Now, to be totally honest, Halloween 2 probably hasn't been in my life for a long time. It's probably only been the last couple of years I've actually probably really sat down and watched it in its entirety. I think Halloween 2, similar to Shaun, I would have seen it around that Scream era. Again, not in totality, probably, one of those things where you go to a party, people watching videos, you put them on, very similar to that Scream scene, but you're not really necessarily pulling, concentrating fully on the movie. You're talking to people and stuff like that. So, because I remember the whole hospital scene pretty well. I mean, obviously the girl getting dunked and actually incinerated in the Hydra bath. I remember that when I was young, but again, like I said, it's only something in the last few years revisiting, and especially last year when they re-released the definitive 4K sort of edition last year was the first time I really got to see it really the best way possible. But it's not one that's been part of the high rotation compared to, say, H2O and the original.
Yeah, H2O, I pumped the hell out of that one.
That was a matter of availability for a lot of us, though, wasn't it? Because H2O was one of the few ones that was rated M, and it was easily accessible for everybody. Where Halloween 2
was rated R.
No, Halloween 2 and 5 were rated R, and they were a fucking nightmare to get your hands on when you were like 12.
Yeah. See, I didn't have that problem because I hung out at the local video store so much from like the ages of 10 onwards that they just started letting me rent whatever I wanted, and then eventually just gave me a job because, like, you actually know more about these movies than us. Can you just come and work here and tell people what to rent?
You are Randy.
I had an open door policy. It deeply, deeply scarred me when Randy died, because I was like, oh, that was who I identified with. Now
could be me.
And I guess my 14-year-old self doesn't have a personality.
And Shaun did touch on something really important too. Like the movie came out in 1981 and would have been on home video not long after, or even whether it was a couple of years after. But by the time we were like sort of looking to get our hands on it, a lot of video shops didn't have good copies of those particular movies, or all of them all the time. So that was the other thing that I feel like I remember seeing the stacks of, Friday the 13th and Halloween and all these movies, but you always felt like there was always one or two missing, or they didn't have a really good copy anymore, to the point where they never replaced it, or they couldn't replace it. So
that was one of the great tragedies of being a film fan in the mid-90s, wasn't it? Like, kids these days I don't want to sound like my dad, but kids these days just won't understand. You don't understand what it would have been like to learn about a film, to learn about Day of the Dead or something like that, and then by hook or by crook, I've got to get my hands on this thing. It wasn't like 6 keystrokes in the Pirate Bay and then you'd have a copy of it to watch in an hour or something like that. Like, I used to live in Frankston South, and I would like ride my bicycle to like fucking Seaford, which is like 5 suburbs away.
It's a hell of a ride.
It's like 15 kilometers to go to a video store that I knew would have one of these films that I was chasing. And then when you got to the video store and you had it in your hands, I was like fucking manna from heaven. It was amazing. And kids these days, they just don't get it. I just don't think they'll get it.
I was watching the documentary In Search of Horror the other night, which is like the huge 4.5-hour documentary about 80s horror movies. And one of the sections they have is the box art and the importance of the VHS box art, because that's how so many people chose their horror movies. And when they said that, I had like a visceral reaction, because I was like, oh my God, I remember pulling Halloween and Halloween 2 off the shelf, and Halloween had like the pumpkin with the hand that turns into the knife, and Halloween 2 had the pumpkin that was like a skull carved out. It was like a painting. It wasn't a picture. There was no Jamie Lee Curtis. There was no Michael Myers. It was like the black background with the orange pumpkin with the skull carved in it. And I remember looking at me like, this movie is going to fucking rock. And I was so excited. And I knew nothing about it other than Jamie Kennedy had spoken about it. And then he was in my hand. But yeah, that physical reaction to holding this thing and looking at everything, it's lost. You know, you flick through Netflix now, or Stan. I think the Halloween movies are on Stan at the moment, and you flick through and you find Halloween 2, and it's just like a still of Jamie Lee Curtis in the hospital, in her hospital gown, just like from one of the shots. And it's like, that doesn't inspire anything. Like, that doesn't make me feel like, oh. And even though I know I like Halloween movies, when I queued it up on Stan this time to rewatch it, I was like, all right, I guess. Like, they're not selling it to the future generations. There's nothing in it that makes people like, ooh.
Let me slap on a fake smile and plow through this shit one more time.
Yeah, like there's none of that. I actually looked up to see if I could go and buy it. Because I don't own a physical copy of Halloween 2. And I was like, I'll go and buy I've got most of the others, but for some reason that one I just don't have. So I was like, I'll go buy it and, you know, watch it on Blu-ray and have the physical connection. You can't just like on a whim buy Halloween 2 on Blu-ray. You've got to like special order that shit. It's not just around, like not even DVD. You can't just go get it, which really makes me sad. Like, we're having a resurgence.
It's so weird. I've got a copy. I used to live in New York, and to my little apartment in Brooklyn, I got delivered the Scream, the Shout Factory box set on its first release, which was in 2014, 2015. And it had every single copy plus Zombies 2, definitive editions of everything. It had like, it's got Halloween 6, the release cut, and then the producer's cut. It's got Halloween, the TV cut, and then the theatrical cut. It's got like hour-long documentaries on every single one of them, and I cherish it so much. I mean, not only the fact that I paid $99.95 for it at the time, and now it's worth like $1,100, $1,200.
Yeah, I was going to say I'd probably pay close to $1,000 to have that myself.
Oh man,
at the moment.
But it's exactly like you say. It's like having that definitive edition, that high definition Blu-ray copy, just on the shelf next to my Fridays, next to my Nightmares, next to, like, it's just, there's something very pleasing about going to the shelf and being able to pick it off and then put it in the Blu-ray player, as opposed to, like you say, lining it up on Stan. It's just too accessible. It kind of ruins the magic a little bit.
Yeah, and I found myself like watching in increments this time, which I've never done before. Like, I because it was just there on Stan, I was like fitting it in around, like, all right, you know, the kids are at school. I've got an hour before I've got to go do something. I'm just gonna like pop it on at 9:30 in the morning, which is a weird feeling for Halloween too. And just like drinking coffee, I'm like, oh yeah, that bit. Oh, I gotta go, and then coming back later that night. And I think that connection to, I don't know, the thrill of like 80s horror is waning a bit without physical copies everywhere. And because they're getting harder and harder to get the physical copies, people just they're not doing it. It's like a specialty thing now to go and have a Blu-ray copy of Halloween 2. It's not just a thing you can do because you feel like it. When did you see it, Michelle? When did you see it for the first time?
Half an hour later.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm waiting. I'm sort of out of my depth. I watched it probably for the first time earlier this year on Stan. So
you have none of that.
No, and I only watched
emotional connection.
The original one probably last Halloween on Stan. Wow. Maybe we can get Stan to sponsor us for this episode.
I got so lazy. I watched it on Stan as well because I was in and out, similar to you, Angus, doing school holiday sort of stuff. So I had to watch it in and out, and save myself getting my copy out and physically putting it in. And I could watch on the iPad and my phone and walk around and just double check a few things I wanted to talk about. And yeah, but
do you have a copy, Cable?
Yeah, I've got the release from last year, the 4K.
Right, of course, yeah.
Which is this? It's the same as probably what you've got, but they've just amped it up a bit. It's the same Scream, Shout Factory, whatever. So, and then the last 3 movies are coming out this year or next month, which is H2O, Resurrection, and The Curse. But that's coming out in a special box set. You can't get them individually.
Those are the ones that you can actually get on a whim on DVD. I think because are they
Yeah.
Dimension or someone else owns them. But if you
Yeah.
can go and get the
Dimension
Halloween
owns them, yeah.
collection, and it's the weirdest thing. It's like Halloween 6, H2O,
Yeah.
H2K. And you're like, what the fuck?
I
The good ones.
actually got those ones a couple of years ago on Blu-ray from the States, and it probably cost me $6. And a friend sent them across with other stuff, so it never really cost me much. And it's only one disc, and it's all 3 movies on the one disc. That's crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
That is the minimum effort that that distributor put in.
Absolute
to get a quick buck.
fucking minimum ever.
Yeah.
You lazy sods.
I reckon whoever owns the distribution rights in Australia has picked up the distribution rights to those films in like a package deal because they wanted to get something else. Like, oh, I really want to get like the Critters series. I reckon we could do a good release of Critters. And they're like, yeah, if you want that though, you got to take these 3 fucking things.
Yeah,
like,
Buster Rhymes
I
in
know.
Halloween.
and it's in the contract. You got to release them at least once. Like, just one disc. Just put them on one disc. Just get it out. Get it out of my house. I hate it. But that comes later. First, we get Halloween 2. The first of what became many sequels and reboots and remakes. And famously, John Carpenter didn't want to do it, didn't want to go back, thought is quoted repeatedly as saying there's no more story to tell, and then wrote the story for the sequel. He wrote the script. Multiple rumors. My favorite is that he wrote it in a night with a 6-pack of beer, sat down, bashed it out, handed it in, regretted it ever since. How did we feel about a sequel to Halloween existing back when we first started watching them?
I had no issue, but I'm actually surprised when you look at the timeline. Like, I'm sure there was reasons why, whether it was bringing back Jamie Lee Curtis and some of the other characters and Loomis, Donald Pleasance. But it's actually sort of surprising that 78 was the first one and this one's 81.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bit of a gap for a sort of quickly churned out horror film that the first one made a lot of money for the amount of money. It made big box office for the small amount of money it costs. Normally, you'd think that would get them to churn it out a lot quicker. So I wonder if in between, a couple of years and maybe Jamie Lee Curtis being busy, they kind of like, oh, we kind of need Jamie Lee. And like you said, maybe it was twisting John Carpenter's arm. But 3 years is a bit of a gap, isn't it?
Yeah. I think sequels weren't as big of a thing. I think we got to remember, like in 78, people weren't chomping at the bit for the next one.
That's exactly right. Sequels weren't really a thing at the time. There was a number of things that happened. Was that John Carpenter had done Halloween and they had created it as a standalone film. They were aware that there was an open end to the movie, and they were happy with that.
Which was smart.
They were just going to leave it. Yeah, I completely agree. But they were going to leave it at that, and that was going to be it. So his next priority, once he finished Halloween, was to move on and do The Fog. So he went into the entire production of The Fog and all that kind of stuff. Jamie Lee Curtis was in that as well. Plus, like you say, Jamie Lee Curtis's career had started to take off, and then it became like this thing where the producers of the first film sold the rights to new producers, which was the Akkads, who still own the rights to it just now, particularly the sort of patriarch Mustafa Akkad. Yeah. And he ended up pushing John Carpenter to try and get it, come back and do another one. And it's just, I think it ended up being a kind of doing it for the dollars kind of thing, unfortunately. That's my understanding of it anyway.
Yeah, I think he, in interviews, he over the years has changed his take on it, as John Carpenter has wanted to do with more than one or two things. Sometimes he gives the nice version, and then a few years later he's like, no, this was actually happened. And I think his most recent version is that he knew that it was going to get made. He wanted the money, yes, but he was also like, all right, Jamie Lee Curtis is going to come back. If all these people who worked really hard to make this first film are going to come back, and if the people who watched it want another one, I kind of feel bad giving them the finger and being like, nope. So he's like, I really couldn't bring myself to direct it, but I could write it and do the score for it and kind of be looming around in the background a little bit and still put my name to it so that the fans could be like, oh, hey, John Carpenter's still involved, so that the film would still get a bit more of fanfare than if it was just a totally new crew of people coming in to make it. And I think that's probably the closest version to the truth, is that it was out of some sort of a felt obligation to the fans and to the people who made the first one to help make the second one, even though it wasn't something he was super keen on. And has repeatedly trashed his script over the years. Has said he really doesn't think he did a good job, and he's really disappointed with what he did. And the older he gets, the more kind of short and
and
direct.
he would be right to be disappointed as well.
There's the perfect in to what Halloween 2 became. It's a different beast for a film that takes place on the same night, which is a really important thing. Like, this film picks up, it actually starts overlapping with the end of Halloween. We get the final confrontation between Laurie and Michael and Dr. Loomis all in the house, and we see Loomis shoot Michael off the balcony, and we get the line, "That was the boogeyman," and matter of fact it was. And then the great line, I'm convinced that the producers put that in just so they could get Donald Pleasance saying, "You don't know what death is," one more time, because it's such a great line. And then we just keep going. The movie just keeps going as if, it's all been filmed in one hit. But almost, 3 minutes in, you realize it's a totally different film we're getting, and that you realize, oh, this is a different director, and we're going to have a different night on this Halloween night. Michelle, did you like it when you watched it recently? Because you don't have any of the memories that we have.
No, I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it the first time. But watching it again tonight before this podcast, I was kind of bored. But the first time watching it, it wasn't bad.
It's slow, isn't it? It's not
yeah,
like,
it's
this
really
is a slow film.
Yeah, I went up and got snacks and came back and was on my phone and didn't miss anything.
And it feels quiet. Maybe it's just the versions I've watched, but my memory of Halloween 2, whether it's VHS or DVD or now streaming, I always feel like I have to crank the volume because it's really quiet. Like, the sound quality is not good. Maybe I don't have the super fancy 4K Blu-ray Shaun and cable. Is it better for you guys? Like, is this a quiet movie? Am I insane?
I don't have a 4K now, but it is still a relatively quiet. It still is a quiet film, but like you say, more quiet than I remember it.
Yeah. Like, every time they're shooting a scene in a hospital, it's almost like they're in a real hospital, and everyone's like, "No, we have to talk really quietly because that guy's actually sick." And it's just like, what? I missed half of what you just said.
Until the score comes on and blasts you out again.
Yeah. Wow. Look, and I'm not angry about that. If there's one bit that you want to hear clearly in this movie, it is the score, with those beautiful stings that come in. But yeah, it feels, I don't know, it feels like they were going for a more brutal film. Like, there is some
There's
stuff
blood.
that happens in this. There's blood. Yeah. Very important distinction between that and the first one. In trying to make it brutal, it's almost like they forgot to do the rest. Like, the momentum is gone. And then nothing happens in Halloween for most of the movie. I think that's what a lot of people forget. In the first Halloween, it's like an hour and a bit of just build up, and then mayhem at the end. And then still, when you get to the end, there's only 4 people who get killed in the whole movie. And then this one, immediately, he kills that girl on the phone, and then he's going in and just killing people in cars, and he's off on a murder spree. But it's almost like they forgot to build the tension. And maybe I was wondering, I don't know what you guys think, but I was wondering, is this a bit of the Jaws 2 problem with Halloween 2? Like, in the first one, he's the shape, he's the boogeyman, he's this specter that's looming, that is the human embodiment of all our fears. In the second one, he's Michael Myers, aka Laurie Strode's brother. Like, is there just too much humanity to him? Have we seen the shark in this one? It's like, no, all right, gonna get that butcher knife again.
I think there's definitely something to be said for it. It makes that horrible choice that so many disposable sequels, particularly of the 70s and 80s and even 90s, they always did, is that they mistake brutality and gore for scares. It's not the same thing. Where the first film, like you say, Michelle, there's very little, if any, blood. It's all implied. It's all creeping shadows, and he's this presence in the background until he's not, and then he becomes this juggernaut of just, he's this unstoppable force. Where the second one, it's an odd beast because it's almost the exact same everything. It's the same cinematographer, it's the same producer, it's the same writer, it's the same stars, it's the same, it's all these things are the same, but the one thing that's different is the director, and it drops the ball so badly. Halloween 1 is this work of, it's like unmitigated genius. It was genre defining, genre changing. It was as much about the craft of filmmaking as it was about the experience. And Halloween 2 forgoes that for gore, and it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It's like Michelle says, it's boring. It's a boring film.
It kind of makes me think back to Scream 2 when Randy starts talking about the rules of a sequel, and he's like, the body count's always higher. Carnage candy.
Oh, I was waiting for that.
Well, it's so true because it is so different. Like you said, that they've ramped it up. There's a lot more kills in this one, but then of course we see a lot more blood, and definitely even for the time, some of the kills are pretty brutal. Like the syringes in the eye or in almost in the temple. I was like, what the
even the blood draining out of her arm, like
yeah. There is some gnarly. I mean, I think the most famous and best kill of Halloween 2 is the boiling the nurse alive in that. That's just insane how brutal that is.
But you know what's crazy? That the funny thing about that is this. Well, I guess just before that is the biggest jerk of the movie in Sleazebag. His kill's kind of a bit off camera and implied. Like you see him get strangled a little bit, but it's sort of shadows and a bit of distance. It's like, no, he should have got the brutal one. Everyone wants to see him get it, and it's like the poor chick gets bloody face burnt off.
Yeah, and then again, I mean, I think you're comparing apples to oranges if you're trying to talk about how John Carpenter made a Halloween movie and then Rick Rosenthal made a Halloween movie. But in the first one, when the friends die, when they're getting strangled in cars and stabbed, and the camera lingers and it holds what's going on like a bit too long, and you're like, oh, this is actually really fucked up what I'm watching, and that makes it scary. Yeah. Or just simple things like when he stabs Bob into the wall and then kind of the cock of the head as he takes it in, and you're like, oh fuck, this guy's like really crazy. Like Loomis was right. Everything he said is right. And you have that build up of Loomis being like telling everything about how he's got no soul, he's got no conscience, he's the devil, and then you see it happening like, bro. Whereas in this one, the people that he's killing, we have no attachment to. Like the first kill is just a girl on the phone being like, oh, it's this guy. Like these aren't Laurie's friends that we've spent an hour getting to know with, John Carpenter and Deborah Hill's excellent dialogue. It's just like, oh, that was right around the corner. I didn't even know if that character has a name.
They're literally just cannon fodder.
Yeah. And I think Halloween 2 is responsible for a bit of the change in slashers, because Halloween's only a slasher in reverse. Like it's only a slasher because it existed and created a genre that we called slashers, and then like, well, that was the original slasher. But when you watch it compared to the others, it's like, no. Like you're told to care about the characters, you get to know them, their families, their friends, their lives, their boyfriends, their schedule, what they're getting up to this weekend. You know a lot about them before they are brutally murdered. And then the second one is like, oh yeah, so we brutally murder teenagers, right? Got it. Like, no, you missed the most important note. It's like, no, I got it. We kill some teenagers, no worries. Off we go. And that's kind of what Rick Rosenthal did. He was like, yeah, we kill the kids. I saw the first one. I saw it. It was all right.
Yeah. Get this one to get our cans out. Make this one an absolute asshole. Get this guy to stalk everybody, and then we'll just fucking obliterate everybody. It'll be fucking great. Don't worry about it. It's bananas.
There is one fun thing that John Carpenter wrote and that I think is executed well, and that is the killing of Laurie Strode's crush in this one, who literally gets crushed and exploded by the cop car because he's wearing a mask. That was quite fun. When they're doing the dental examination, they're like, 17, 18. And he's like, well, he's 21. He's like, oh, possibly. And then they're talking about how they can't find him. And he's like, how old is he? And he's like, he's 17 and wearing a mask. And Loomis is like, 17, wearing a mask. Like, oh, whoops. That's
your Donald Pleasant. Your Donald Pleasant's impersonation is actually pretty good.
Oh, great.
Keep that up for the rest of the episode.
All things considered.
I'll do the whole
shot him. I shot him 6 times.
That's a good one. He has this beautiful way of just like hanging on to vowels a bit longer than is necessary, and like chucking a
I shot him.
I was going to say this is probably more a story for Shaun, because I'm sure you have the backstory, it, but you actually did touch on everyone coming back. Now, Donald Pleasance was pretty famous for not really loving being in the first one initially, until maybe it went gangbusters and everyone rated his performance. Obviously, he's back in this one. I'm assuming he got paid well to come back, and obviously he's come back for a few sequels since. But the other one that didn't come back was Nick Castle, who was doing something else. And it's actually Dick Warlock as Michael Myers. And it is, it's not a huge difference, but for me, it's always been noticeable that he's a little bit shorter, a bit more stocky. But
Yeah.
and the mask is that little bit different because they stupidly lost. I think did they lose the last?
No, the
original
mask is the same mask. So Nick Castle had the mask at
But
his
didn't they have
house.
to change it to fit his head?
Yeah, they did some alterations so it doesn't fit the same, but it was his mask. So he had the mask. They tried to replicate it. They couldn't make it look right. They went to him and were like, we're trying to make this mask. It can't work. Do you have the original? He's like, yeah, I got it. You guys can borrow it. And then they took it and never gave it back.
Yeah, they lost it that way.
Never gave it back. But yeah, Nick Castle wasn't the shape in Halloween 2 because he simply wasn't asked. No one asked him to come back. He wasn't.
There you go.
Do you know what became of Nick Castle?
He's director.
He was directing.
He's a director.
Yeah, he already directed.
He directed The Last Starfighter.
He directed something after Halloween, and he'd finished directing it by the time they made Halloween 2. And one of the producers of Halloween 2 was like, "Oh, he was a director. We didn't think he'd want to be the shape again." After everyone was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
Imagine being one of the producers of like Halloween 2 and because people weren't crazy back in the 80s, and now in the internet era and the con era and everything, you'd be walking down the street one day and people know who you are because they're so obsessed, and they'd be like, "You didn't get Castle back." Like, oh fuck, it was 1981. I don't know what you're talking about. Leave me alone. But yeah, most of the people involved with the first Halloween film, in small capacities, went on to do a little bit of directing, including directing
even Dean Cundy.
Yeah, they all got in a little bit.
Do you know what Dean, the cinematographer, do you know what he went on to direct?
No, I don't know which one he directed.
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids 3. That was as good as it got.
A classic.
That was as good as it. Yeah, that was as good as it got for his directing. Like he shot Escape from New York and all that kind of stuff, and then tried his hand at directing. And yeah, this Honey, I Shrunk the Kids 3. The great Dean Cundy.
Wow, I guess that's kind of like what happened a bit with Wally Pfister after, coming off all the Christopher Nolan films. And it was like, he's the greatest ever. He's amazing. He's like, I'm going to direct my own movie. He directed Transcendence with Johnny Depp, and it was like, this sucks. And he was like, I was never here. And then went right back to being a director of photography. So yeah, the two skills aren't necessarily interchangeable,
translatable.
Yeah, which is a shame, because Dean Cundy really is, I would say, almost as responsible for the Halloween franchise existing and being as good as it is as John Carpenter, because you really
100%.
You really feel him when he's not there.
And look, for all the problems that Halloween 2 has, and it's got a couple. Like it's a long way from a perfect film. One of the highlights, undoubtedly, is the cinematography. Dean Cundy's, that's the one thing that makes you feel like maybe it's still the same night. That beautiful, those wide angle lens flares and the Panavision glide cam and all that kind of stuff. Dean Cundy, I tip my hat to him, because his is probably the most valuable input to this project, I would suggest.
Yeah, and shooting at night, like you touched on there, the way that, because in the first movie they get a lot of daytime before the night falls, so they get to use some beautiful vistas. I said, this one, no, it's a night movie from the beginning to the end, and you've got to try and shoot in that. And I always knew that was pretty difficult to do and pretty cool to make it look good and to be able to see anything, because you got to make it look dark but also see what's happening on screen. But I had like a reminder of how good that was recently when I was listening to an interview with Jordan Peele talking about Nope, his most recent film, and there's a lot of nighttime stuff in that, and it's like big, vast, open fields that they're trying to capture by moonlight, so it's really, really dark, and everyone's like, the cinematographer's insane, and he's like, yeah, I got this really great, I think he's a Danish cinematographer to come and do it, who's this just incredible cinematographer who doesn't really do horror, but he's like, no, come and do this. And when I was watching the movie, I'm like, how the fuck did I get these shots? This is incredible. And then in one of the most recent interviews, Jordan Peele was like, yeah, I'll let you guys know a little secret. We actually developed a new technology to shoot this, and all of the night scenes were shot at day. And then we had like infrared cameras and other things going on, and then we overlaid stuff to make it look like night. And I was like, fuck, in 1981, Dean Cundy was shooting night at night and making it look just as good. He really deserves a lot more modern day respect than I think he gets.
And it's tough, man. Like, shooting at night is so time consuming, because you can't rely on anything. And the idea that Dean Cundy has not only managed to make it look good, but if you go back and watch it again, he sculpted the light Like it's
Mm.
like there's design to it. Like he's not just blanket lighting everything for expediency's sake or anything like that. Like there's actually design to the lights. I can't even imagine how fast this guy must have been working every single night and then kept it up for the entire shoot. It'd be a nightmare.
I mean, it's worth knowing, like, his career didn't end after doing a couple of Halloween movies. He also shot Jurassic Park and Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Apollo 13 and Back to the Future 3. Like the guy worked and has churned out some absolute masterpieces. So he does get respect in the industry. But I feel like outside of a lot of people who really love films, if you say the name Dean Cundy, people are like, is that, what are you talking about? Is that a slur? What are you doing? What did you call me? Like, it's not a name that people are like, oh, fuck yes. Whereas if you say John Carpenter, even like a passing fan will be like, yeah, he's great. So you got
That's kind of me. I have no idea what's going on.
He's good.
Dean Cundy's one of the best.
Yeah, he really is. Is he still doing? He's doing some documentaries.
He's still working.
He shot a bunch of Book of Boba Fett. That's his latest big credit. He's out there making probably the only good modern Star Wars thing on Disney Plus. So that's pretty sweet. Thanks, Dean Cundy. You're the best. But yeah, before that, really kind of took some time in the doldrums with a lot of credits I've never heard of.
What were you going to say, Cable?
There's a few things I was going to say. I was just going to say, sort of bearing the lead. Like, what do people feel about the reveal of Laurie being Michael's sister? Because it's one of the more controversial sort of plot points in the Halloween franchise that they set up. So, I mean, but they ran with it after the second one, and then obviously had a reset once or twice, changed things around a little bit. But
well, look, I will just say I don't know accurately how I feel about it, because I really have bounced both ways. When I first saw it, like when I was younger and I was watching on VHS and I was just experiencing the Halloween series for the first time in order, it was a bit of a like, whoa, fuck, what? Like, I enjoyed that moment as an audience member, as a teenager watching Halloween 2, being like, oh, what? That's her brother? Oh man, that's crazy. How did that happen? As years have gone and I've watched it more, I've been in like, I'm not quite sure why they felt the need to do that. And now with the benefit of hindsight of seeing, how they've gone and retconned it with the recent trilogy to erase that storyline. And I, particularly Halloween 2018, I was a big fan. I was like, yeah, get rid of that mess. Like, it just got too convoluted, making it like, what, now he only kills his family? But why did he start? What the fuck? What's going on? Why do I care about this? And so I think I have to go with my gut and my initial reaction. And my initial reaction before any of the stuff that came 40 years later was like, wow, that's fucking crazy. I think you can't blame the reveal in Halloween 2 on what Halloween 4, 5, 6, H2O and H2K did with it. Like, they didn't know where it was going. They were just coming up with something new for this movie. So just as looking at it as the first sequel on the line, doing it before it became this ongoing franchise, I liked it at the time. And I don't think I can betray 13-year-old Angus enjoying that at the time by being an adult, being like, that's a silly thing to do.
Michelle, like, how were you aware of that actual twist going into it? Because I know pop culturally, I mean, some of that stuff, if you hadn't seen the movies back in the day, you're probably going to know some of the plot points. Or was that something totally new to you as well?
No, well, I knew, but I think because I've seen Halloween 2018 before I saw Halloween 2, I was like, what is going on? They're not related. What are you talking about? So to me, it was a bit confusing, and it wasn't like a revelation.
In fact, in 2018, they go out of their way to say, like, wasn't like her brother or something? It's like, nah, that was just a rumor.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's sort of where I was coming from, thinking they're not related. What are you doing?
I honest to God, just, it's become such a thing now that it just is what it is. I don't remember a time before it being canon. I don't remember. I was just inundated with horror films at the time that it just, I don't know. I don't remember. And now it, like I say, now it just is the way it is. And I'm like, okay, like once upon a time they were siblings, but they're not anymore. But that's okay, because she's been dead twice already. So who the fuck knows what's going on?
True. Good point. I don't know. Yeah, it's similar to what Shaun said. I think it's been part of the subconscious the whole time. It's like that was even probably before I saw Halloween 2. You sort of knew she was a sister. But now that there's sort of retcon it, I do think it's better. I don't like that they were siblings, to be honest. But again, there's so many years that you believe that to be true. So it's almost like imagine if the new Star Wars sequel had Luke and Leia weren't actually brother and sister. All of a sudden they told us that. You'd be like, what? For 30 years I believed one thing, and now you're changing it on me. So
Luke's just like, I could have fucked her. God damn it. God damn it.
Yeah. So yeah, like it's just been part of its history, part of its story for so long. I think you just get used to it. But it is, in hindsight, I think it was probably not the greatest move to make them siblings. But I understand John Carpenter's writing it, and he's drinking a 6-pack, and he's probably just seen Empire, and having Vader be spoiler alert, Michelle, Vader is Luke Skywalker's father.
Oh, thank you.
I
never knew.
I think, mate, that's what I was sort of thinking when I was watching it again tonight. I was kind of like, is that the thing? They want to have that extra hook, that extra motivation for him to be after Laurie, but possibly if there was going to be a future movie, I don't know.
I guess also, like, what do you do with another, 96 odd minutes of film when you've already told this story? Like, what can you talk about? We literally know as much as we can know about Michael Myers from the backstory that Loomis gives us. So in order for us to have anything else to learn about his character, there has to be a reveal. And what else could you do that would have any impact? Like, from a storytelling point of view, mechanically, I think it makes sense.
To be fair, and this is going to ruffle feathers, Rob Zombie did it better. When Rob Zombie did his Halloween 2, he had the intelligence and foresight to just get rid of what is essentially the first 60 minutes of the 1981 Halloween 2, start with Laurie Strode, with Michael Myers arriving at the hospital basically straight away, and then have the final 30 minutes of Halloween 2 81 be the first act of his film, and then afterwards we chart what is basically just Strode's downward mental trajectory, which I think is a more interesting film. Whether Rob Zombie pulled it off, that is a different story. But where he wanted to take the story, I think, was a more interesting and intelligent way than 1981 approached it. Because what we're dealing with then is we're not dealing with necessarily gore and violence and cannon fodder. What we're dealing with is somebody's psychological unraveling. And that her psychological unraveling based on the trauma, because let's fucking face it, Rob Zombie's first Halloween film is fucking traumatic.
Good
I went to
God.
see it at the movies. I went to see it with my best mate at the movies, and about 20 minutes from the end, he just puts his head in his hands and he leans over to me and he goes, "Tell me this is gonna fucking finish soon." Like, it's a punishing film.
Yeah.
Of course she's going to be traumatized. Of course she's going to be derailed. Of course she's going to be self-abusive and all that kind of stuff. That's interesting. Like, there's other ways to take the film. And in hindsight, for this humble reviewer, Rob Zombie's take on it proves to me that John Carpenter was just being fucking lazy. Really, he was just being lazy. He was just banging out a script for the dollars. He didn't put any heart into it. It was just A to B to C. We'll kill these kids on the way, and then we'll wrap it up at the end.
Yeah, look, I don't have a lot of affection for the Rob Zombie Halloweens. I think that's just because of how much I love the original John Carpenter one and a lot of the sequels that came. But I do think that there is a better way to tell this exact story, the Halloween 2 exact story, for reasons that fucking will baffle me to my grave. The most recent Halloween sequel, Halloween Kills, chose to go right back to the hospital and do the same fucking thing they did in Halloween. Like,
I know.
What was bad about Halloween 2? We put Laurie in a hospital bed and didn't use her for the whole movie. She's kind of laid around and did nothing, and none of the kills meant anything. And then 41 years later, they're like, all right, so we're going to put Laurie in a hospital bed and not do anything. And it's like, fucking second, am I being pranked? What's happening? Like, it's just... But you're right.
At least in Halloween Kills, she isn't wearing a fucking ludicrous wig.
Oh my
wig was appalling.
God!
Holy shit!
Yeah, there's some funny interviews out there on the internet of Jamie Lee Curtis talking about that wig, and about the rage that she felt about it and the problems that she had with it and the that it's followed her around her entire life, and she really is not a fan. You're right about it being it's been a part of the canon for so long. It's been a part of the mythology for so long. It's hard to imagine Halloween without it. But weirdly, it also isn't an issue for the rest of the original run of the Halloween series, because they're not in Halloween 3. Then Halloween 4, she's dead, and it doesn't matter, they're brother and sister. And then 4, 5, 6, it's like, yeah, it's it's her uncle now that's chasing around. But the Laurie Michael brother sister relationship just fucks off as a storyline until H2O. It doesn't mean anything, yet somehow it's become this huge defining part of the series, that when Halloween 2018 retconned everything, one of the big things they said was yeah, we got to get rid of the brother sister storyline. It was just too difficult to write a sequel with that in there, let alone the druid shit. But this was just too crazy, so we had to get rid of it. And I was like, yeah, that was crazy. But when you go back and watch, no, it's half of one movie that Laurie and Michael are brother and sister, and then from then on it's just talked about until 20 years later. So it's I think for fans it's become a big thing that's a discussed or debated issue. But for the actual series, it never really had that big of an impact on anything. Even in Halloween 2, it doesn't change anything. He was trying to kill her in Halloween 1. He was trying to kill her in Halloween 2. Donald Pleasance is trying to stop him. What does it matter? It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
It just kind of makes the movie have something going on for it, really, which I guess kind of means it earns its stripes a bit.
Speaking of the druid stuff, Michelle, do you know about all the druid stuff that comes later on in the series?
You've just spoiled 3 or 4 movies for me. She's dead. There's druids. This happens. I've seen H2O and Resurrection.
For someone who
Michelle, buckle up, you're in for a fucking ride.
Witchcraft and all things in that field.
Weird.
I know. I'm going to go watch number 3 tomorrow.
3, 4, 5, 6, which are the ones that really play into your interests. I mean, 3 is literally called Season of the Witch. I don't know how that one ever got past you, but yeah, it's 1 and 2 is there's a guy named Us stabbing people, and then everyone involved with the Halloween franchise is and now we're going to go in a completely different
now it just gets weird.
20 years. Yeah, it is a wild ride, and I'm excited to talk Halloween movies with you over the coming episodes, Michelle, who are having never seen them, and it's going to be a hell of an experience.
That is an interesting idea for me. Is people who, with the utmost respect, Michelle, people who have never seen them, just coming at it from a blank slate, but coming at it from a blank slate from an adult's point of view, not completely divorced from that hysteria. Because forgive me, how old are you? I know you're not supposed to ask a lady her age, but I don't care. How old are you?
I feel young here. I'm only 34.
I'm only 35. So So, I mean, you're not that young, but at the same time, you're adult enough that to be divorced from all that hysteria that Angus, Cable, and I were talking about. It must be a bizarre thing to see these films with fresh eyes, knowing that they're such an integral part of the film community, and in turn, at times, the zeitgeist, depending on what time of the year it is. How does that experience play out for you? Are you ultra aware of all the Halloweens and their existence and the mythologies and all that kind of stuff, or are you completely straight and just walking in with no prior knowledge?
Yeah, no prior knowledge at all.
Wow,
that's wild.
I almost envy you.
So far, I know. I'm actually a little bit fucking annoyed because how good would it be? Are you impressed with them so far?
I like them so far, but I know they get a bit weird. And then I've seen Resurrections that got really weird.
Wow, look, Resurrection.
When you say weird, you're being polite. They get shit. I mean, yeah.
Well, I think the coming films in the Halloween, 1 and 2 are quite iconic and revered, and I think Halloween 2, none of us really are singing its praises from the mountaintops, but as we discussed, there's a lot of good in this film that didn't quite hit the mark. It's also suffering from coming off the tail of one of the best horror slashers / just straight up films ever, and being set on the same night doesn't help it. But I think from 2 onwards, where this series goes, the fan base completely shatters, and you will have people who say they love Halloween, that it's their favorite movie ever. You have people say they love the Halloween movies. You just have people who every movie is great, and then you'll have people I love the Halloween movies, but 5 and 6 can eat a bag of dicks and in this like severe fandom of people who love these movies, you'll still have people who go in every different direction. You know, there's the people who completely ignore 3. There's the people who rave about 4 and 5 as being these unappreciated masterpieces. There's people who stand around and be like, 6 is really important and a really great. Like it's a franchise that has as many lovers and haters of each film equally. I think after 1 and 2, it really does spiral off, and it's hard to gauge. I have no idea how you're going to feel about any of the films that are coming up, honestly.
But to be totally fair,
I can't wait.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's what's good for the podcast is someone being on here that is going to see it with fresh eyes. Hopefully on Stan or on a decent DVD instead of an old beat up VHS that's been watched 3,000 times and worn out in places. So enjoy the ride, Michelle.
Thank you. I'll let you know. Stay tuned.
Yeah, the next episode might just be like an hour and a half of you just berating us. It's like, why the fuck did I have to listen?
Well, I think if you have that,
we could have helped you find your new favorite movie.
Yeah, but I think if you've got an Instagram
Top Gun Maverick,
Aussie Hello Witch, I think you need to have seen the Halloween movies to actually keep that Instagram name.
Oh, otherwise I have to change it.
I think you should.
Where does the handle come from?
Just was a random sort of thing. I like witches. I'm Australian. And
She
I like
lives in a Hallow.
Yeah, I like Halloween, not the movies, just the holiday.
The time. Good.
That's another one that baffles me. Like you're someone who you're currently like going through, what is it, like 100 days of Halloween or something on your social media stuff. Like you have started Halloween 100 days early. And at no point in your 100 days of Halloween celebrations have you sat down to watch any of the Halloween
Halloweens, yeah. I mean, if you're being fucking generous, if you're being generous, you can watch 2 or 3 a fucking day. Like that still leaves you 99. That still leaves you 99 days to do whatever the fuck you want. Like you've got plenty of time, sister.
And to go back to the start of this podcast, to go back to the start of this podcast, it's not like you have to ride 15 k's on a bicycle to get the VHS.
No, it's true. They're all on Stan.
In the piss and rain, you've watched this film. It's fucking rubbish, but you love it anyway. You're fucking soaking wet from the rain. Your thighs feel like they're fucking burning. I didn't know your thighs could fall off, but my thighs are gonna fucking fall off. And you put it in, and it's snowy and scratchy, and you fast forward it through the ads at the beginning. It says, "Have you got what you paid for?" Yes, fuck you. But like then you press play. And then you watch it and you're like, that was fucking genius. I love that. I love it.
And then you've got to ride back to return it.
No. Because you went through all the effort. It'll be because you went through all the effort to rent it and to go through that much effort to rent it. When you finish it, you fucking watch it again. You watch that shit again at least 3 times before you take it back.
Yeah, it's due back at the video store next Saturday, but fuck you, I'm taking it back on Monday because I'm going to get my money's worth out of this.
Yeah. That's right.
I do miss Video Easy. They should bring all that stuff back.
You rewatch that son of a bitch into the ground. I think when I rented Species once, I think I watched Species like 4 times. It was an overnight rental. I watched it like 4 times in 2 days.
Was it because of the movie or was it because of the movie or Natasha Henstridge?
Yeah, was it because of 19-year-old Natasha Henstridge?
Like if we were to draw a Venn diagram, there might be some overlap.
No comment.
But mostly it was because when you rented something back then, you're like, it doesn't matter how I feel about it. I'm gonna watch it a bunch because I paid cash money and it's sitting there in my house and I have no internet.
It's funny you bring up Species because that, funnily enough, we towards the end of the school year, it was when things were winding down and the teachers. No one, I don't think, understood how much nudity and sex was in Species, where the biology teacher was actually the one that hid it. I mean, you watch it was like the day off that we had or the double period that was off. It's like, we're going to everyone chip in a couple of bucks and I'll get some pizzas and we'll get a movie. And I don't even know who decided it was Species. Everyone's like, yeah, we'll watch it. And it was like that weird, like when you're 16, 17, awkward kind of like nudity. Guys are like, oh, I'm sitting next to a girl. It was just weird. But
your teacher got you Species? My teacher got me fucking Flubber and Space Jam.
Yeah.
I had a similar experience in, I think it
Like-
was year 9 or year 10, where we had the substitute teacher take us for a class and they wheeled in the TV on the cart because obviously the substitute teacher couldn't be bothered. And there was like a couple of VHSs on the cart and they just picked up the top one and put it on. And it was Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And they're like, oh, it's a high school movie, whatever, and put it on. And we're all watching it. And like, oh, this is pretty fun. And then Phoebe Cates takes her top off. And I remember my friend just like, he was sitting next to me, just grabbing my arm and sitting up being like, what the fuck is that? What just happened? What's going on? And like in a perfect moment, the substitute teacher was not looking at the screen. They were like writing something in paper and not paying attention. And everyone in the class had the good sense to say nothing. Just go and just watch this, which is already filled with drugs and all sorts of inappropriate things. But when that happened, we're like, oh, a mistake has been made and we are going to reap the benefits. This is the best day of school ever.
I watched Species for Ben Kingsley myself.
Oh my God, I forgot he was in it.
He's just slumming it, isn't he?
There's a lot of people in that movie that I forget
Alfred
are in that
Molina.
movie. Wow.
Michael Madsen.
I remember
Michael Madsen's one of my man crushes. I love Michael Madsen.
And the chick that was more famous in
CSI.
Yes, that's it. CSI.
Marg
I forgot her name.
Helgenberger or something.
You're doing good to have that sitting in the back of the brain.
And funnily enough,
Mark Helgenberger is her actual name. I just looked it up. It's
Helgenberger.
Michelle Williams is also in it with Forrest Whitaker, and
Forrest Whitaker is one of the soldiers in it. Yeah,
and they have a few sequels, which I did not know.
I remember the sequel. I watched the sequel, and I remember the start of it is like an astronaut goes to Mars, and something happens to him, and then he comes back and shoots himself in there with a shotgun, and then his head regrows. And when I watched the first one, I was like, "This is amazing."
No, but I'm pretty sure there's a third.
I was one of the 6 people that saw that. There is a third or fourth. I was one of the 6 people that saw Species 2 at the cinema.
Oh, there you go.
And it was terrible. And the guy that shot himself in the head, he ended up completely disappearing off the radar. He lost his fucking mind. He ended up getting caught for child sex charges and all sorts of shit. Like The
freaking sequel has a cast as well. Mark Helgenberger is back. Michael Madsen is back. Henstridge is back.
Yeah.
Michael T. Williams is in it. George Zunza.
Yep.
James Cromwell. What is going on with the Species movies, guys? Are they secretly great?
Well, we're going to talk about Species 2 now.
Species 2 is terrible. Have you seen Species, Michelle? Have you seen the greatest horror series of all time, Friday the 13th?
I'm gonna save you a lot of time here, and Shaun, and you can just go ahead and presume that if the question is "Have you seen?" the answer is no.
No.
Yeah.
Friday the 13th.
The notable exceptions being Scream, Hocus Pocus, and The Craft.
Yeah. Michelle has seen
I've seen the
For
remake.
the audio listeners, Shaun is just showing Michelle he has a Friday the 13th tattoo to illustrate his disgust that she's never seen. It's a good one.
I don't always chew when I do. I ha. It's the fucking best.
I've seen Freddy versus Jason, and I've seen the Friday the 13th remake.
How did?
Why is he on this podcast?
How have you seen? Because he makes excellent points. You've seen Halloween Resurrection,
he's
but
an
not
ass
Halloween
like you two.
3. You've seen Freddy versus Jason and the remake, but not Friday the 13th. I mean, it's a hard position to defend where you find yourself, Michelle, as a horror fan, as a Halloween fan, as a lover of all things spooky and weird.
Take these out and just log off.
I'm glad you actually brought up Friday the 13th because I also think maybe Halloween 2 was indirectly inspired by Friday the 13th, and that was that Friday the 13th was inspired by Halloween because Paramount are like, oh, we can do this slasher thing. We've got to do a movie about kids getting butchered or teenagers being butchered, and we've got to copy that sort of thing. And then Halloween's kind of like, oh, there's this new franchise, and they're just going to butcher all these kids. Oh, maybe we can do that too, and maybe we need to go back to that well. I wonder if there's a little bit of that happening as well.
It's a good point you make because, I mean, the timing lines up. Friday the 13th Part 1 was released in 1980. Sean Cunningham was the driving force behind it. And he, thinking that Friday the 13th was supposed to be a knockoff of Halloween, Friday the 13th does everything wrong that Halloween 2 does wrong, in that it's not about the scares, it's about the gore.
Yeah.
Most famously, the fact that Tom Savini, from Michelle, whether you know Tom Savini or not, he was like in the 70s and 80s and a little bit through the 90s, he was like the special effects guru. You wanted gore and practical effects, you went to Tom Savini, right?
Oh, that's why in that Lock and Key show they're called the Savinis. Has anyone seen that show on Netflix?
Probably.
No, that's probably why. So Tom Savini came on and he did the practical effects for Friday the 13th, but all the practical effects were gory practical effects. It was Kevin Bacon getting skewered by, knives through the throat and all that kind of stuff. And like, it was like, and they dropped the ball mistaking gore for horror as well. But then Friday the 13th was a gargantuan hit as well. Friday the 13th was a fucking awesome moneymaker for Paramount. And that's obviously where the genre started to lean to at the time. So it wouldn't surprise me if 1 year later, when Mustafa Akkad wants to make more kids getting slaughtered, then he's using what the kids want at the time as a template for what he's going to produce.
Yeah, it's
maybe
the like the snaking the tail thing, where like it's created and then it just starts to slowly destroy itself. And like back to what I said before, Halloween is only a slasher in reverse. The first Halloween movie wasn't a part of a genre; it started it. But then Friday the 13th was a part of the genre and kind of defined a lot of the rules. So I think you hit the nail on the head that Halloween 2 is like, oh well, we're a part of this genre that apparently is going on now, and the rules are boobs, blood, murder, death, credits. Like that's kind of what we do now. And we lost
it's weird.
all the subtlety.
I never really realized that until this is a weird parallel. Until I saw an interview with Sylvester Stallone when he had just made Rambo Part 4. That was the one that was
John
set
Rambo?
in Thailand.
That's Afghanistan. No.
No, that's 3. Part 4 was the one where he's in Thailand.
The most
and
recent
it was
one,
just
yeah?
No, the one before the most recent one.
Oh, okay, sorry.
But the most
correct.
Set in Thailand. John Rambo's like a retired guy now, and then some Christian advocacy guys come to him for help to take him up the river, and it just ends up pandemonium. Like the body count is like
it's ridiculous,
200 people or something like that. It's absolute. The violence was absolutely wild. And I saw an interview with Sylvester Stallone, and at the time in 2008, 2009, when it came out, all the pornography films were big. All the Saws, the Hostels, the House of 1,000 Corpses, and Sylvester Stallone was asked, given like Rambo's always been violent, but not like this, why did you make it so violent? And he says, because I have to keep up with what people want, and what people want is Hostel and Saw. So it really wouldn't surprise me if Halloween 2 was like, I got to keep up with what people want. And what people want is practical effects and blood.
You're right. If Halloween makes $1 trillion compared to what it was made for, and then people are going to see that movie, and I'm sure it was re-released the year or two after and going around the country, especially in the States, and it's making money, and then Paramount go to Sean Cunningham and say, can you make us a movie similar to Halloween? And he does that, and like you said, Tom Savini comes in, it's all gore, and that goes gangbusters. Well, it makes perfect sense that the evolution is like, well, we're going to go back to the Halloween. Well, like, geez, kids and the drive-ins are packed. People are going to see this movie. That's what they want. We'll give them what they want. And again, it goes back to Randy saying, death scenes are much more elaborate. Carnage Candy. I mean, it's totally that. Tom Savini's amazing. Like some of those death scenes in Friday the 13th are crazy good.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I didn't realize until years later, and it made a lot of it really sad. But the reason that all Tom Savini's special effects are so good is because he was a war photographer in the Vietnam War, and he saw it all for real and had the photos, and then came home and was like, "What do I do with this trauma?" And then he was like, "Oh, I guess I'll make these photos again, but out of prosthetics." So there's a reason that we got such intense imagery out of Savini.
And he has such a great cameo in From Dusk Till Dawn as well.
Oh, incredible. Yeah. Come on, that's the bet. Have you seen From Dusk Till Dawn?
No, don't ask.
Don't even bother.
Like peak hotness, George Clooney, and
tattoos.
Peak hotness, Salma Hayek in a film where they fight vampires.
Quentin Tarantino.
Peak hotness, Quentin Tarantino.
Don't ruin it.
I feel like we all have different levels of peak hotness because none of that sounded appealing.
When do you think Clooney's peak hotness is, other than 96?
There is no Clooney
coming off the
peak
back
hotness.
of Batman Forever. What do you mean? Okay, well, there's no peak in that. What? It's never ending. Is that what you're saying?
No,
Same
it's
as Salma Hayek. There's no peak because eternity has no peak.
Not into George Clooney.
Oh my goodness! I don't know what do we do with this kid? My God, you don't think George Clooney and Summer Hayek are hot? You haven't seen a single movie since 1985. What is going on? This is so upsetting.
And make your merch. Shut up.
That's true.
Show off your hoodie.
Shirt. You reminded me when you were talking about Rambo and Sylvester Stallone and all the gore. I was in 2009-ish, I think. I was working on the Pacific, the Spielberg miniseries that came after Band of Brothers, and I was during many long delays. I was talking with the special effects guys who had just come from shooting the Rambo film, and he was sitting around. We were doing pyro that day, and he was sitting around talking about the pyro that was on the Rambo movie and how there was one particular scene where he has this giant flamethrower. And they made the flamethrower, and he was like, "It's not big enough." And they're like, "Well, that's what a flamethrower is." He's like, "No, it has to be bigger." So they kept having to go back and make the flamethrower bigger and bigger. And the idea of the shot that they were going for was shooting this flamethrower at this tower that had all these extras in it who would jump out before the tower caught fire with pre-rigged pyro that would be going off once they were clear of the building. And Sylvester Stallone made them make the flamethrower so big that he actually set the building on fire with the extras inside.
Fucking hell.
And then when someone called cut, went and yelled at them for ruining the shot. I was like, oh, okay. He went completely insane on that movie. That's great.
Apparently he's an absolute tyrant. One of my mates, Dmitry Golovko, who when I was making film used to be our composer and sound designer, he scored the Australian film Red Hill.
Great film.
For director Patrick Hughes. And then Patrick Hughes got picked up by Sylvester Stallone to make Expendables 3. And as a result, Patrick Hughes went to Dimitri and says, well, we've already got a working relationship. Do you want to score Expendables 3? And I was with Dimitri the night. We went out to dinner in the city. We were Chinatown. And he got a call from Patrick Hughes to say, it's official. You're on. You're the composer for Expendables 3. And you should have seen Dimitri, like he was, as you can imagine, he was just absolutely beside himself, like couldn't believe his luck. And then flash forward like 5 months or something, and he's just like head in his hand, poor guy, like head in his hand. You're like, Dimitri, all right? He's just like, oh, he's like, Sylvester Stallone's a fucking dick. Like he said, like, he's like, he fired me off the film. He says, like, he wasn't happy with it. He says the entire score budget for the whole of the Expendables was like 40 grand or something like that. He says he wants me to basically work for a year on that. He says he had a big argument with Patrick Hughes and fired Patrick Hughes off of the set, and then he started directing it and fucking fired Dimitri and then got Brian Tyler on to and they just cobbled together the director. He says Sylvester Stallone is an absolute tyrant. He says he's insane, which doesn't surprise me. You don't get to be one of the biggest stars on the planet by being a nice person that sits in the background like a wallflower.
Good God.
Which is why we've got to keep an eye on Cable, because is it a legitimate his face? What?
I don't have a Planet Hollywood. I'm sorry.
Neither does Stallone anymore. That place is gone.
No, I know.
Oh, the sad loss of the 90s.
It is a sad loss of the 90s, isn't it?
We had some good.
Do you know
good
what
stuff.
Planet Hollywood is, Michelle?
Yes, I used to have a Planet Hollywood Sydney T-shirt. I wore it everywhere.
Just making
Have you been to Planet Hollywood Sydney?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I thought this was going to be like you loving
Got it off
Halloween,
eBay.
but not seeing the Halloween movies.
No, I've been to Planet Hollywood.
I love Mikey Myers. He's my favorite of the killers.
He was in Austin Powers, wasn't he?
Yeah. Him and his sister Laurie Strudel, they're the best.
Laurie Strudel. I know this is going to sound rude again. Like, do you work, Michelle?
Yes.
Like, not like I assume you're just going to take this part out of the podcast. You do work. You work full time?
No. So yes, I know I've got the time to watch the movies. Cable reminds me all the time.
No. I was going to be fucking polite about it. I was going to say, look, let's assume that you work full time every day. That means you can watch 7 films minimum a week, like 1 film a night.
Probably watch about 7 films a day.
Who does? Me?
I could. No, I could.
No, we know you do.
Well,
Shaun.
I mean, then I definitely do. Okay, Michelle, dig upwards, dude. I'm trying to fucking throw you a bone here, yeah? What you got to do is come up with a list of like Friday the 13th, Phantasm, Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, blah, blah, blah.
Good.
Phantasm. I've got the Arrow box set. It is
Yeah,
so good.
Nah, see, I've only got the first one. I was like, I almost bought the whole set, and I'm like, I love the first one. I'm like, I'll stick with that. And I'm kind of regretting
It's so good. Anyway, get your hands on everyone. One every, because when's the next record for the next Halloween?
I don't think we've locked it in yet.
Tomorrow night.
No,
Peace
not
out.
tomorrow.
Can you watch 7 films in one day?
She can.
I can.
Start right now.
Is another question. Yeah. I'll just
Yeah.
get Stan up on my phone and just.
Yeah, sit. I
No,
mean, some
don't
of them
start
are
watching
like,
now.
Angus just said stop
You
watching
don't
now.
good.
That would be pretty funny for the record for Halloween 3
Oh
if Michelle is
my
watching Halloween 3, her
God.
phone is recording it, and just as the episode goes on, just periodically, she's like, wait, what? What? What's going on? What is that? What just happened?
Or what we can do is commit right now on camera that we will all come back tomorrow at 8:30 to record Halloween 3, except for Michelle. She's going to record, and she's going to have to watch as many Halloweens between now and then as she can possibly fit in. So that when the camera starts rolling at 8:30 tomorrow, she's just a fucking shell of a woman hanging on to whatever sense of fucking humanity she's gonna have.
You wouldn't be able to remember what storyline was from what Halloween film at that point. Like if you watch them
Oh my
all
God,
in
that
one hit for
podcast
the
would be so
first-
fucking good, Angus. That podcast would be fucking genius.
Are they
That is
even all on Stan?
which is I can just imagine you coming on and be like, why was Paul Rudd wearing that weird witch mask? It's like the wrong one. He's not in that. What happened?
Isn't he Paul Ashley Rudd credited in the
Ooh, you might be right. It's one. It's not his first credit, is it? But it's one of his almost. First
Yeah,
one of
it
his
is.
first.
It's his,
How many are
it's
there?
his first credit. It comes before Clueless. There is 7, 8, 9, 10. At the moment, there's 10. 11 is going to be released.
Well, Stan only has 3 and 4, the 2 Rob Zombie ones, and Halloween H2O, which I have seen.
Oh, it doesn't have 5 or
Okay,
6.
well,
No.
that's okay because
Oh,
5
but
and
I've
6
got-
are fucking terrible.
Well, I've got 5 and 6. I can lend them to you.
Okay.
I think they might be
No
on,
excuses now.
Shudder. You can get like a free 7-day trial of Shudder. And just use it to watch those movies.
Like Friday the 13th, like the first one is not even on Stan. All the other ones are. But
I've got that on DVD for you too.
Yeah, I got a DVD as well.
just send me a
got
list,
two.
drop them around.
Don't weasel
I've got
your way out.
3 Friday the 13th, 4 Friday the 13th box sets.
Oh, well, the next
So-
time you're in Ringwood, just drop them off. Give me the list.
Why the fuck would I ever go to Ringwood?
Thank you.
Do you want me to watch the movies or not?
I live in the Mornington Peninsula. Why the fuck am I going out east?
Oh, we'll
I
come
ask
visit.
you.
We'll come visit you.
Fair enough.
Paul
You
Stephen
should
Rudd.
definitely come visit.
Oh,
Not Paul
Stephen.
Ashley, Paul Stephen Rudd.
Paul Stephen Rudd. Yeah.
It didn't
No,
sound
that
right in
was
my
his
head.
first.
I
That was his first film credit, and he shot it
Oh,
before
should we-
Clueless.
No, it's fine. And he looks the same age as he does now.
What the fuck is this?
See our edit
I just
point.
said it's an edit point for Michelle.
Yep, you should have done
Oh,
that like
right.
half an hour ago. Most of this is going to be cut out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, no,
true.
this part. Yeah, cut this part out.
Yeah. All right,
This is all
let's
fun.
finish
This is
talking
just
about
part of
this
the
fucking movie.
fence.
Okay. Okay, I've got something.
Yeah.
How's this for a random person that went on to, well, you could argue went on to a big career or not. But Dana Carvey's actually in this movie.
Yes.
For like
Harvey?
2 or 3 seconds.
2
Yeah,
seconds. Yeah.
He's the assistant to the blonde reporter at the start that's over sort of eavesdropping on Loomis when they're talking, trying to find out what's happened and bodies and blah, blah, blah. So right at the start of the movie, yeah. Danny Carvey wearing the baseball cap as the assistant.
Wow. Not many
Yeah.
other people from this film went on to do anything though, did they? This is one of those casts where you're like, you guys really got like chewed up and spat out. Like occasionally, you'll see with Halloween 6, the Paul Rudd is like, oh my God, Paul Rudd's in this movie. Or with Friday 13th, you're like, oh my God, Kevin Bacon. With this one, Lance
Nightmare on
Guest.
Elm Street, Johnny Depp.
What a career Lance Guest had, hey, old Jimmy. Or Pamela Susan Shoop. Or Gloria Gifford. Or even Dick Warlock. Like Dick Warlock does all the con circuit now, but he didn't really go. Like no one in here, including Rick Rosenthal, the director, like no one really catapulted out of this film into anything
No.
good.
How Rick Rosenthal ended up scoring the gig to direct Halloween Resurrection is beyond me.
I guess they were like, we need something to get fans excited. If
So
we,
why don't we choose the guy who directed Halloween 2? That seems like a fucking long bow to draw. Like,
Yeah, the only other time I can think of that happening is when they got the guy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, the guy that directed GoldenEye to come back and do Casino Royale.
Or
Martin Donner. That one worked that
no,
time.
Campbell.
Martin
Campbell.
Yeah, Martin Campbell. There you go. Yeah.
You're thinking of Richard Donner.
Which Halloween movie did Richard Donner direct? Was that the one where Michael Myers teams up with a sassy black detective and they go out and solve the murders that Michael's committing?
No. You're confusing it with the one where he joins up with the kids and they find the pirate ship.
Scooby-Doo?
That would be an amazing crossover. Imagine if at the end of the Goonies, instead of finding junk, they just they open the door and it's Michael Myers and he just fucking murders them all. Goonies never say, ah! Fuck, that'd be great. Oh God, I want to see that movie now. That can be Goonies too. You get the original cast back. There's all this hype. Everyone's excited, and then 15 minutes in, they open the door and Michael Myers there and he kills everyone, and then you just move on. It's a Michael Myers movie now. It's what the fuck?
Or alternatively, it starts and everybody's having a party, and Corey Feldman is this deep in a K-hole, and everybody leaves because they're sick of his shit, and we just spend 90 minutes while he trips balls.
Oh my God.
That's a film.
And periodically puts on his albums and is just listen to this, guys, listen to this, and mouths along to his own albums.
He is.
If anyone wants to have a good time, look up YouTube clips of Corey Feldman performing his music live, but not on concerts. Look up the footage of him performing live on the morning shows in America, where it's 7 a.m. and you've got these perky hosts and now here we have Heartthrob Corey, and he comes out dead serious in his Michael Jackson outfit, singing these really intense songs about the trauma he went through, but to weird backing music, and he usually has no backing dance. It's just him on this weird vacant space on a morning show, just going.
I can't wait.
It's amazing. It's amazing stuff.
I feel like this podcast is derailed.
It usually does.
No, it all ties back.
It works though.
At least Feldman was in
the vibes high.
The Friday the 13th movie. He was in Friday the 13th 4, so at least we're keeping it slasher related.
Friday the 13th 4.
When does he go to
Friday
space?
the 13th, the final chapter.
10.
Thank you.
10.
Oh, 10. That's a lot of movies.
Well, that's why it's called Jason X.
Oh, I still have a life, just because I don't work. I have other things I could be doing.
Actually, while we're talking about Corey Feldman, I don't know why. Maybe my, a bit of Mandela effect. For a long time, I could have sworn Corey Feldman was in 2 of those movies. I know they use a sort of flashback, or they did the cameo.
He's in.
I know he technically is, but I felt for a long time, because I hadn't seen some of those Friday the 13th movies for a long time, I felt like he was in 2 full movies, and I was like, oh
no.
Yeah, no.
His character Tommy Jarvis was in.
Yes, of course.
The Tommy Jarvis trilogy, which is amazing. But it's new footage they shot for 5. So
no, I get that
flashback stuff. It's literally him doing a new scene pre-credit. So you're forgiven for thinking that, because they trick you into thinking that.
Yeah. So when you do marathons as a kid, and you sort of lose track of where you're at. Yeah, I thought.
And also as a kid, where they keep telling you this is Tommy Jarvis, and you're okay, I guess this is the same guy. You lose perspective. I didn't even know the name of the actor who played Tommy Jarvis in 5 and 6. Well, it's 2 different actors.
No, it's 2 different, because one became a born again Christian, so didn't come back the second time.
That was number 5, and then number 6 was a guy called Tom Matthews, who is now in the construction business. He's not an actor anymore.
Wow.
He was an actor all the way up to the late 90s, and now he's pretty successful in the construction business. Don't ask me how I know that.
I believe it's just from a lot of research and interest. It's passion. It's you being passionate.
Have you seen the documentary Camp Crystal Lake Memories?
Not all of it. Isn't it's very long, isn't it?
Oh, it's 9 hours long.
Yeah, I've watched I think probably 3 of those hours.
Yeah.
It's the fucking tits. It's so good.
Yeah, they really went all out. I liked it a lot.
Oh my God. So good. I might watch it now.
I made about this, just a final thing that I found weird about the movie, especially given everything that we've talked about, is the edit of Halloween 2 was redone by Carpenter because he didn't like the pacing of the first edit. There's the quote that I've got here is that he found it as scary as an episode of Quincy M.E., which, is a medical procedural show Diagnosis Murder. It's not meant to be scary. And so he went in and tried to speed it up, but apparently Rosenthal wanted the sequel to feel more like the original. He wanted to emulate the tension and not the gore, and he got angry at Carpenter for speeding things up and getting to the gore and focusing on that more. This smells a bit like bullshit to me. I can believe that Carpenter took over the editing to try and speed up what is a very slow film. I can't believe that Carpenter was like, let's focus on the blood. And the other guy was like, no, I don't think that Rick Rosenthal was out there shooting stuff, trying to make it creepy and slow. I think he was trying to show blood. And then everyone was like, what's going on? He's like, Carpenter did it. And he did the thing. He cut it together like that. It's not my fault.
You got to remember as well, this was Rick Rosenthal's first. This was Rick Rosenthal's first film, and the reason that he ended up getting it was because he made a couple of short films at NYU or whatever it was that he was at that garnered a bit of attention, and he got himself an agent, and the agent happened to be the same agent as John Carpenter. So when John Carpenter said that he wasn't going to do it, then the agent said, well, I've got this new kid on the block, Rick Rosenthal, maybe he can do it. So he's inexperienced as well. And by this time, John Carpenter's already made Dark Star, Halloween, Assault on Precinct 13, The Fog. Like, he's already well entrenched in the horror in the horror catalogs. And the idea that John Carpenter, and none of those films relied on gore. None of them. One of the most controversial moments in John Carpenter's career was in Assault in Precinct 13, when a young girl goes up to an ice cream truck and she gets murdered. And it was this absolutely horrifying moment. And yet it's the concept that is horrifying because there's no blood. So the idea that John Carpenter's come in and then just tried to speed everything up and then insert all the gore back in is frankly insane, which smells to me like Rick Rosenthal doesn't want to eat any fucking humble pie because he realizes that he's made a bad film.
Yeah.
And here at the end of the rant.
Rant's over.
End of rant.
End of rant, yeah.
End of rant.
Also,
the trademark. Yeah.
Only Halloween movie to show
trademark.
Yeah,
the morning
Angus's trademark.
after. This is the only time we get to see the morning after Halloween night. Every other Halloween film ends Halloween. We get to see the morning after in this one.
And guess what? It's foggy.
It's foggy because Antonio Bay is just around the corner, and some weird shit happened with ghost pirates the night before. So it all ties back together.
Have you seen The Fog, Michelle?
Don't even start it.
If you, I know the answer is no, if you say I've seen the remake, I will come to your house and flip over a table.
I haven't, and you just said you wouldn't come to Ringwood anyway. So
no, he said he would.
No, I said I wouldn't come to Ringwood.
I feel like I was gonna be able to ride my bike over with a couple of DVDs. Now I feel like I just have to get a moving truck now.
Beep, beep. Yeah.
We'll be back in 10 years when she's finished watching everything.
Wow.
It'll be cued to that meme of that old woman on the Titanic. It's like
it's been 86 years.
She's finally watched all these horror movies.
I've seen Nightmare on Elm Street.
Which one?
The original.
Okay. Well, look, there's been
and the remake, but the original.
There's been a few.
The remake, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh my god, that movie. Okay, so I think we've all fairly.
Have we ever talked about Halloween 2?
We talked about it a lot. I think we've all fairly come to the conclusion that this film has merit. In the canon of the Halloween films, it has memorable moments and fun moments, but it sounds like we're all on the same page that this film really isn't a success. Which honestly pains me to say because I remember enjoying it when I watched it when I was younger, and when I rewatched it, I think last year, I was genuinely surprised at how much less I enjoyed it. Like I still like parts of it, but like I said, it is slow, it is quiet, it's the deaths are just like, stab, next one, whatever. I really was a bit bummed out about
pretty
how much
soulless.
Yeah. I feel like from my point of view that it was one of those movies too that unfortunately you've got to either decide to watch it because you want to watch it and see it for yourself and make your own judgment on it. But I think it has been one of those sequels that has, whether unfairly or not, has been slammed over the years that you kind of go, oh, no, it's going to be shit. And then the first time I sat down and really watched it, I go, oh, I actually enjoyed that a lot more. And I don't think it's as bad as people make out. But you're right, the couple of viewings, and even today, when I was sort of looking back on it, I enjoyed parts of it, but it does feel a little bit more of a slog. So then maybe it's like, oh, well, maybe it isn't that great a film, and maybe everyone was right. And just the first time I watched it in its entirety and was able to sit down and relax and watch it, that I didn't have a high bar for it. So then when it went above that low bar went above that, I'm like, oh, this is a lot better than people give it credit for. Yeah, I still don't know how I feel about it, but I will say one of the positives, going back to what you were talking about before, Shaun, was shooting it all at night. Yeah, it would have been hard, but I think they do such a good job. Visually, it looks
good.
I think it's really solid visually.
It's a good looking movie.
I agree.
And that's definitely one of its very positive traits. Like you said, it's pretty hard to do all that stuff. It's not an easy shoot for entirely being night. Obviously, in a building that's quite dark as well at times, not well lit. But yeah, overall, I think visually, I love the movie. I think it's really good.
I agree.
Should it exist? If we're looking back now at the sequels, does it earn its existence?
No, definitely no. No. There's very few sequels that do earn its status. Godfather is probably the most notable, but
Top Gun Maverick.
The idea of Top Gun Maverick, Top Gun Maverick.
Scream
but
2.
even then, but I mean, the world
turn you off now.
the world is richer for having Scream 2, but it's definitely not a necessity. Like Scream could have been one and done, and it would have been
button
great.
that you hang up.
But the fact, in hindsight, that we've got two and three, like we're stoked that we've got them, but we didn't need them by any stretch. But I don't think it's the same sentiment here. Is that Halloween 1 is like the film community and culture is richer for having it, but the Halloween 2 just, you can't even watch Halloween 2 and say, oh, I'm so glad that it exists as a result. It's not like Scream 2. It's not like The Godfather Part 2. You're like, it's just a bit shit. And that's kind of, like you said, Angus, it's a little bit heartbreaking to say. I'm a little bit heartbroken. I've got such fond memories of it. And I get such fond nostalgia for everything that came along with it. But it's just not very good. So that's the problem.
And I think it's a little bit telling that the film series itself has kept trying to kind of forget it's there. Like I said, like after this, we don't get Laurie and Michael again. Like we go to a completely different series with Halloween 3. And then we come back to Michael Myers with Halloween 4, that there's no Laurie and we're off on a different storyline for a couple of movies. And then H2O kind of acknowledges, the brother-sister thing, but really is focused more on number 1. And then straight up in 2010 with the most recent trilogy, they've just said no, no to this ever existing. And so now as film fans, we have this weird, rare circumstance where if we do want a sequel to John Carpenter's Halloween, we can pick which one. We can pick where we go there. We can go straight to 4 and it means nothing. We can go 20 years later H2O and it means nothing. We can go 40 years later to 2018. That means nothing. And it's almost like the Halloween series has become a choose your own adventure. But in almost every outcome, number 2 gets lifted out straight away.
You can almost even just go straight to Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. You can go from Halloween Carpenter's to Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, and it's probably getting more merit than Rick Rosenthal's installment. Unfortunately,
it's such a weird situation to be able to
film in a canon,
an existing. There's not fan fiction. It's not like, no, in the books this is like, no. You can literally pick a studio released Halloween movie and decide that that's going to be your sequel to John Carpenter's. And I don't think in a lot of people's choices that this is gonna be the one they land on. Like, if I'm gonna sit down and watch a run of Halloween movies just for shits and giggles, I'm probably gonna jump over this and go, H2O or H40 and have a more enjoyable film experience.
H2O for the win.
Yeah, so,
why do I have to watch the rest of these?
Because they are important to the history of our culture. As film nerds, as Halloween lovers.
Questions. Don't ask questions. If you want to be a part of this, you're gonna have to fucking sit through there, just like the rest of us did.
Since when did this become a foursome podcast? Who put him in charge?
It's because you will appreciate Halloween H2O and Halloween 2018 and everything that came after so much more once you know what came in between.
I know, and look, and not to get on my high horse and get too much into Michelle, but if you're such a Scream fan, you've got to kind of know how that evolved from Kevin Williamson loving Halloween and Friday the 13th and some of these other movies that were inspired.
You said that about Prom Night, and that didn't make me appreciate Scream anymore.
No, but I think that was more of a line for that movie. But a lot of Scream was inspired by was it Jason Lives and Halloween? I'm just trying to think. There was definitely one of the Friday the 13th movies that was sort of in the middle tier.
There's that reference to that Casey Becker scene in this one, like when Laurie Strode gets out of the car and she sees the people and she can't yell out to them.
Yes.
So I picked that up.
Yeah. These movies, the Halloween series is responsible. The good and the bad in the Halloween series is responsible for so many of the good horror movies that came since, because the people, like us, watched them when we were kids. And then we're like, this gives me a great fucking idea. The screenwriters went out and wrote these stories that then, as we grew up, we kept watching them like, oh, that's a cool idea. Where'd that come from?
The crazy thing was, when I was watching it this time too, I couldn't help but think Woodsboro is clearly Haddonfield because they got the same run hospital.
Yes, which hospital do you go to?
It's like so dark and so sort of the stalking around the hospital and all that. I was like, oh my God, like that's... I wonder if that was, especially Scream 5, whether that was sort of heavily inspired by Halloween too.
And just like in Halloween, everything in Scream comes back to family. Everyone is somehow related to or connected to a family member with Nev Campbell, with Sidney Prescott, and it's the same with Laurie Strode and with the following characters. It always comes back to family in all the Halloween movies, and I don't think you get any of that without. You don't get any of the Scream stuff without that. You will have fun.
Okay.
Any closing thoughts on Halloween 2? On Rick Rosenthal's Halloween? Everyone just looks sad now. Now that we've all had a good long think about it, we're all just a bit like, oh.
No, I probably have to echo what you both said, is that I enjoyed it, but was it necessary? I think it's just definitely a cash grab. They've gone, while there's license to print money, we make a $1 million film and make $35 million. I think the other thing that probably made it almost not necessarily a necessity, but kind of leans into it, is the fact that it was called Halloween. I think Halloween being an annual, event, I think, kind of, if it was just called The Boogeyman or The Shape, it maybe doesn't get a sequel necessarily, but I think you've got Halloween, you've got this tie-in, you got a tie-in to an event, an annual event, especially that's big in the States. I think that's just license to print money. You've got a time to bring the film out as well, so maybe that's the other hook, is that it's called Halloween.
And look, at it outgrossed The Howling in 81, Friday 13th Part 2, and Omen Part 3 all in 81. Like it definitely, box office wise, that's a
big year for horror.
Man, I think just about every year in the 80s, he's like, what?
Like 1981, every 3 months there's like a titan of the genre coming out.
It's just insane. Yeah. I only found out this year that The Thing and Blade Runner were released on the same day.
Yeah, I found that out a couple of months ago as well.
Cinema used to be so good all the time.
Yeah. And now we got
and no one saw those
Zac
movies.
Efron.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
In the Firestarter remake, that was a tough hang. That one.
I never want to fucking talk. Never want to talk about that fucking film again. I was just absolutely like, why the fuck is John Carpenter? Why is he fucking scoring that?
Because he never got to make it. This is him finally getting to be a part of that film, because he got kicked off Firestarter after The Thing bombed. And then he always wanted to do it, and then he went up doing Christine anyway, because they kicked him off because it was like, no, Stephen King properties are too hot to hand over to someone who just had a bomb. And then they immediately turned around and were like, do you want to do the Killer Car movie?
No.
But yeah,
John Carpenter sitting with his fucking head in his hands for 3 months. It's like, how the hell do you make a car scary? Wow. Christine's got a crazy cult following, and I don't get it.
Yeah, it's a grower, I think. First time I watched it, I was like, all right. And then it was on. I can't remember where, it was just on, and I sat down and watched half. I was like, I remember thinking that was that cool last time. I really liked that. And then I went out and bought it on Blu-ray and sat down and watched it. I was like, oh, I like this. Yeah. This is goo. It's definitely having.
Michelle, have you seen Christine?
Just stop asking. It could be like a drinking game at this point. No, I have not.
Oh, I would be brain dead by now on the floor.
More so than usual.
If we ever need to fill like 90 seconds on the
Savage.
podcast, we should just ask Michelle what movies she has seen.
Yeah.
We can get
I
her
just,
list.
No, there's 49
Oh my
of them.
god! I just want to see the supercut of it. Michelle, have you seen this? No. Have you seen this? No.
No.
Michelle, have you seen this? No. Michelle, have you ever seen this? No. Just bang, 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 bang.
No,
Next
we could-
week.
Yeah.
And the
Oh, sequel suck.
The fun of it is, as the person who edits all of the footage for Sequel Suck, Michelle would have to be the one to put that together.
We could make that happen.
We're never gonna see that.
That would be
We're never gonna see
incredible.
it.
That would be such.
Oh,
such
do you know
good
what?
promo.
Do you know what the big horror news is for me? Is that next month, October 6th, I think it is, Hulu, who have just come off the back of great success with the Predator reboot / sequel Prey, Hulu are going to drop Hellraiser.
Yeah, I have.
They've remade Hellraiser and they've
Yes.
recast Pinhead as a woman.
Yes.
Yeah, have you seen the first look images?
I have.
I'm hate
I'm
them.
not convinced yet. But
The,
if you've
the
ever
nails
read
in her
Clive
head
Barker's,
have little gems on them. That
Oh,
feels.
make it pretty.
Yeah, it's that.
yeah,
She's bejeweled.
The-
And
I
the
know.
effects,
But
like
just
the,
though,
all the like cutting around her neck is all CG instead of practical effect. But there's
no,
also
it isn't.
it is, yeah. It's all CG
Shut up.
unless they've
If
digitally
I
touched
fucking
it up.
find out that that's different, come to Ringwood. I'm gonna get you. You don't live in Ringwood, do you?
I don't live in
You live
Ringwood.
in
No.
Ringwood.
I'm not
I
going to
was
tell
like,
you
what did
where
I
I
do?
live. No,
I know where he
gonna
lives.
say where I live.
Yeah.
There's also a series that's happening as well, like unconnected to the reboot.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a Hellraiser TV series,
Mm.
and the series.
Michelle,
And
has
no
someone
before you
have
ask.
you
attached.
have you seen Hellraiser?
No.
Damn it, Hellraiser's pretty good.
Yeah, who the fuck? The book sucks. I'm amazed that the movie, like, did
The book sucks. The Clive Barker book,
It's real bad.
The Hellbound Heart. I
Yeah.
love it. I've read it
I hate
about 4 times.
I hate it. It's the book
When
version.
you were
of,
reading it,
the book version of
were you
Halloween
using
2,
your
it's
eyes?
just really slow. And
Do you have
dull,
ears?
And then nothing much happens.
I listened to the audiobook as well, where Clive
Oh,
Barker
I
reads it.
was gonna say, don't tell me when you said you have eyes, can you read? It's like Angus probably listened to it, but then it's like,
No, I read it.
But curiously, in the Hellbound Heart, he actually describes Pinhead. Well, he doesn't call it Pinhead at first. Pinhead was given to the character later on. It's called the Hell Priest. The Hell Priest
and isn't it
was
a woman in the book?
yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's not strictly a woman, but deliberately androgynous.
mm.
And the box,
Fluid.
Le Marchant's, yeah, Le
Very on
Marchant's
trend.
box. Le Marchant's box wasn't the sort of brass engraved thing that it's become. It was just plain black lacquered faces with no clue as to how to open the box or anything like that. Like there was some curious to see what changes they're going to make in the reboot. I'm excited for it though. I think Barker's
if you want to talk
imagination
about
is pretty ripe.
If you want to talk like an 80s horror series that really went off the friggin' rails and is in needing of being brought back to some glory days, Hellraiser is the one.
Fuck me, right?
Like it got bad quick and then
Diabolical.
it got worse.
How many movies were there in Hellraiser?
The remake that's coming out is gonna be 11.
Didn't even know there was that many.
And one of the main people attached to be like the what do you call it, the showrunner, the main guys for the Hellraiser TV series, David Gordon Green, baby, he's back.
Okay.
I'm
Is he
feeling,
really?
yeah, I'm more excited about the TV series than the movie because
if they say Evil dies tonight in Hellraiser, you're out, aren't you, Angus?
Done for.
Oh god! What I hope is in the TV series that at the end of every episode, or no, at the beginning, it's just Pinhead looking straight to camera, just saying, "We have such sights to show you tonight," and everything is tonight, and over again, he just says it again and again and again, and then again, and then people start chanting, "We have such sights to show you tonight," and then everyone is like, "What the fuck is happening?" Yeah, I think the TV series will be good. What were we talking about? Halloween 2. Did we wrap that up? Did we?
Yes, I think we've wrapped it up.
Did we
Unless anyone's got
Do we have an endpoint for the edit?
positive.
We cut all this nonsense out to actually.
I like
finish the
that
episode.
the start of it continued on
Yeah.
from the first one because
Yeah.
that doesn't happen a lot in sequels. Usually it's like a year later or 2 years later. So like that part of it's cool.
Mm.
It's like a TV show almost. It just keeps going. But
Yeah.
that's
Which I
that.
think Friday 13th too does.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, they
as
do.
well. Oh no, it's not like the exact same night,
there's a
but it picks
But
up with her in the
re-
hospital, and then it kind of moves forward a little bit. Yeah, it
Well,
is
I think
pretty cool.
a few of the Fridays pretty much they give a recap of the previous movie leading into the next one, as if like if you haven't seen the other one for a while or you couldn't rent it, we're giving you a quick refresher.
3 or 4 is really weird. I can't remember which one, but it's really weird because it's like the camp counselor sits them down. It's like, I'm going to tell you guys what happens, and like the first
Spoiler
like,
alert!
2 minutes.
Spoiler
of the movie,
alert!
Is that 2?
It's part 2, yeah.
Yeah,
and it's like the first
and
12
just
minutes of the movie
basically
is just like the whole.
It's just them recapping the entire fucking first film
and like showing footage of each death. It was like, how would he know that happened? He wasn't there.
Yeah. Anyway, sleep tight, kids.
Yes.
Sends them all off to bed.
Evil dies tonight.
And we're done.
Just out of curiosity, how many stars would you guys give it?
I think my answer is such a long and complicated answer, but same with what I said, because it's hard to go back. I think it probably settles at like 2 3/4. I don't know. Like there's a lot of nostalgia there. There's a lot of like remembering how much I liked it when I first watched it, but giving it like 3 stars feels like it's too good, but just giving it 2 stars sounds like I think that it's abysmal, and I really don't know how I feel about it. 2 3/4.
I'll jump in. I still enjoyed it, but if you're comparing it to the first one, it's not even. You can almost say it's not even half.
5.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is this?
I think similar to Angus. I was thinking 2.5, but almost maybe a 3 because the nostalgia is still there. It's still Michael Myers. It's still Jamie Lee Curtis playing her role, even though it's a smaller, condensed version of that. But I think it's not one that I'm going to be putting on a hell of a lot to watch, to be honest.
No.
Repeat viewings. I think I'm probably done almost for my lifetime. Maybe watch it one more time. I don't know. But I think maybe 2 3/4 is probably about right. 2.75.
I'd say probably like a 2. I definitely liked it the first time better, but trying to watch it again tonight, like it was hard to get through. Yeah, probably like a 2.
Definitely a 2.
Just
Definitely.
a flat 2.
And that's only because it's the flat 2. Like if Cundy wasn't the man, I mean, it would be fucking next to unwatchable. It would be bad.
Yeah.
It would be a bad film.
And if it didn't have the score propping it up, like the score does a lot of heavy lifting in this movie just by reminding us of the first one. Like it has so many of the same stings from the first movie. And you hear like the and you're like, oh yeah, Halloween. And you kind of forget for a moment that this is Halloween 2.
Angus, has anybody ever told you you've got a voice of an angel?
No, but I'll take it.
Again. Do it again.
Just this. Can you loop this to be a 10-hour YouTube video, Michelle?
It's like he's got the voice of Jesus and Fergie.
That's going to be the song at the end now.
And on the 7th day, he said, "Big girls don't cry." That's
good. On another note, let's see your jumper, the product. It's there you go.
Yeah.
Scream Forever. And what does the bottom part say?
Sequels suck. And it's not Scream Forever, it's Scream 4 Forever.
Yeah, Scream 4 Forever. Good job. You're just repping all the merch. What does it say?
Hear the swing by Everclear.
Yeah. I think is this the part where I go, how are you wearing the merch that Michelle gave you like 2 days ago? And I gave you a shirt like 6 months ago and I've never seen you wear it.
I usually wear
jealous
it under,
much?
I usually wear it under the jumper
the hoodie.
that I'm wearing, and then I forget to take the hoodie off and record. And because up until recently there was no like video footage that was going out, it was all audio.
True.
I was never like, oh, I got to show the T-shirt. I'd finish recording, and be like, I don't think Cable knew I was wearing this T-shirt.
It's one of the two.
My wife wears.
It's going to be embarrassing
to the
in
gym a lot.
under.
So,
mine's underneath. Yeah.
My wife just wears the Sequel Suck T-shirts to the gym a lot too.
You'll see, I don't have one of them yet.
Getting promo at the gym, baby.
Bring out the new ones with our faces on them.
All right.
We'll tee up 3 in the very near future. As soon as Michelle can get around to watching.
So I need to go watch it right now.
Yeah, go. I'm almost tempted to. After talking about 2, I'm like, I really want to watch 3. I got the score to 3 on vinyl recently. It's fucking beautiful. It's so good.
Let's wind this up, Angus.
Bye.
Thank you for having me, guys.
No worries. Thank you for joining us, Shaun. And thanks, Michelle, for watching Halloween 2 for us.
Yeah, no worries.
Everyone go watch Season of the Witch.
Well, on that note, Don't forget, not all sequels suck, but maybe this one.